English, Chinese and German. And we'll take some questions, of course, from Berlin and here in Brussels. But first, I give the floor to the Council President.
Good afternoon, Angela, and good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased that we could speak by video conference with President Xi, together with Ursula and Angela. Unfortunately, our physical meeting in Leipzig wasn't possible. Europe needs to be a player, not a playing field. Today's meeting represents another step forward in forging a more balanced relationship with China. We strive for a relationship that delivers on our mutual commitments, that generates concrete results for both sides, results that are also good for the world. In some areas, we are on the right track, and in others, more work needs to be done. We made it clear where we stand, where we agree, and where we disagree. Real differences exist, and we won't paper over them. But we are ready to engage, ready to cooperate where we can, and ready to roll up our sleeves to find concrete solutions. And on those difficult issues, we conveyed a clear and united European message. We want a relationship with China that's based on reciprocity, responsibility, and basic fairness. Today we addressed 4 key topics: climate change, economic and trade issues, international affairs and human rights, COVID-19, and economic recovery. China is a key global partner in reducing global greenhouse gas and tackling climate change. And we encourage China to be even more ambitious. The EU is setting the bar high, carbon neutrality by 2050, and we count on China to show similar leadership by implementing the Paris Agreement. Angela will say more about this. We have a robust trading relationship with China. The EU is China's first trading partner. On average, we trade over 1 billion euros a day, and trade can energize our economic recovery. But we want more fairness. We want a more balanced relationship that also means reciprocity and a level playing field. That's why we welcome today's signature of the agreement on geographical indications. It's a big step in the right direction. We are working on a comprehensive investment agreement and concrete results in other important areas. Ursula will say more about that. And in the digital domain, we defend our vision of a free, open and secure cyberspace for the good of our people and of our societies. As global players, the EU and China have global responsibilities. This means upholding the rules-based international order. The national security law for Hong Kong continues to raise grave concerns. The EU and our member states have responded with one clear voice. Democratic voices in Hong Kong should be heard, rights protected, and autonomy preserved. We called on China to keep their promises to the people of Hong Kong and the international community. We reiterated our concerns over China's treatment of minorities in Xinjiang and Tibet and the treatment of human rights defenders and journalists. We asked for access for independent observers to Xinjiang, and we called for the release of the arbitrarily detained Swedish citizen Min Hai and 2 Canadian citizens. We agreed to discuss these issues in detail at the Human Rights Dialogue in Beijing later this year, which will also include, we hope, a field visit to Tibet. We called on China to refrain from unilateral actions in the South China Sea, to respect international law and avoid escalations. COVID-19 remains a deep and urgent threat. Only collective and transparent action will send this virus to the history books. There is only one way to find a vaccine and deploy it in all countries, and that's global cooperation. We expect all countries to cooperate with the impartial, independent and comprehensive evaluation of the international health response to COVID-19 and support the WHO to identify the source of the virus. We encourage China to pursue an economic recovery that leads to structural reforms and that shapes a greener, more sustainable economy. And this includes implementing the G20 action plan to drive sustainable global growth and reduce global tensions. And in Africa, China should be engaged in multilateral efforts on debt relief that will spur economic recovery. En conclusion, nos discussions aujourd'hui ont été extrêmement importantes.
Were very important.
Que parler, dialoguer
We
est
understand
important,
that talking and
mais ne
having a
suffit pas.
dialogue
Il
is
s'agit de
important, but it's not
transformer,
enough. We
nos
must
messages
transform
en
our
actes.
messages
Nous
into
sommes
actions.
déterminés
We
à
are
continuer à
determined
être
to
engagés avec la
continue
Chine pour
our
promouvoir
commitment
nos valeurs,
to
pour
dialogue with
défendre
China, to
nos
promote our
intérêts.
values and defend our
Nous
interests.
voulons une relation
We want
équilibrée,
a fair
fondée
relationship
sur
with
le respect
China
pour les
based
intérêts
on
mutuels.
respect for
Nous
mutual
considérons que la
interests. We believe that reciprocity and transparency must be at the heart of our commitments. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much
And
indeed,
now we're going to
President.
switch to Berlin.
Ich freue mich heute auch im Anschluss an den EU-China-Dialog als Videokonferenz hier bei der Pressekonferenz vom Ratspräsidenten und der Kommissionspräsidentin mit dabei sein zu können. Deutschland hatte ja während seiner Ratspräsidentschaft das Projekt, den ersten Vollgipfel, Vollformatgipfel mit China durchzuführen. Das wäre heute gewesen. Covid hat uns einen Strich durch die Rechnung gemacht und insofern war es wichtig, dass wir heute diese Videokonferenz hatten. Die Themen, die wir heute besprochen haben, neben den aktuellen Themen, sind Themen, die wir schon 2018 mit Präsident Xi verabredet haben, und es zeigt sich, dass sie von großer strategischer Bedeutung sind. Die Themen sind genannt worden von Charles Michel. Ich will mich hier vor allen Dingen auf das Thema Klima konzentrieren, will aber vorher auch positiv sagen, dass ich mich sehr freue, dass es gelungen ist, einen praktischen Schritt einmal zu machen, auch bei den Handels- und Wirtschaftsfragen, nämlich eine Einigkeit über einen ersten Schritt bei geografischen Herkunftsbezeichnungen festzulegen für die deutschen Weinbauer an Mosel, aus Franken und Rheinhessen. Ist das heute ein guter Tag, genauso für das Münchner und das bayerische Bier. Aber es werden dann in einigen Jahren weitere Produkte folgen, die deutlich machen, welche Qualität unsere Nahrungsmittel doch haben. Wir haben Druck gemacht, dazu wird Ursula von der Leyen ja gleich etwas sagen, dass wir beim Investitionsabkommen vorankommen müssen, und wir haben eben unsere strategische Zusammenarbeit im Blick auf Klima deutlich werden lassen. Insgesamt muss die Zusammenarbeit mit China auf bestimmten Prinzipien beruhen, Reziprozität, einem fairen Wettbewerb. Wir sind unterschiedliche Gesellschaftssysteme, aber wenn wir uns zum Multilateralismus bekennen, dann muss er regelbasiert sein. Beim Thema Klimaschutz haben wir die Tatsache, dass sowohl die Europäische Union als auch China sich zum Pariser Abkommen bekennen. Das ist sehr, sehr wichtig, und wir wollen einen hochrangigen Dialog installieren, der nicht nur punktuell stattfindet, sondern systematisch zwischen China und der Europäischen Union, bei dem es um die Vorbereitung der Glasgow-Klimakonferenz am Ende dieses Jahres geht. Hier geht es ja um eine Überprüfung der nationalen Ziele, und so wie die Europäische Kommission ihr Ziel für 2030 verschärfen wird und sich zur Klimaneutralität bis 2050 bekennt, so werden wir auch mit China in einen Dialog eintreten, auch dort bezüglich der Frage, wann China sein CO2-Peak erreichen wird. Das ist nach jetzigem Stand 2030. Ob China dieses Ziel auch noch
to have a dialogue about whether that goal can be improved and so that climate neutrality can be achieved quicker as well. At the moment, China emits half of all CO2 emissions from coal-fired power stations, half of the CO2 emissions in the world. And that's why we talked with the President about the transition to other energy forms. We know that that is a structural challenge for the economy, but China wants to go down this path. We have particular interest in the emission trading system which China is creating. It's working on this at great speed. And an ETS system in China will be the largest in the world. Of course, we have an ETS in the industrial area in Europe already, and the fact that the Chinese wish to do this as well will be a very interesting possibility for cooperation which we'd like to make the most of. We all know the difficulties surrounding this, though. It took a long time for the European system to get to a pricing system. And it's also meant that in Germany less electricity is produced by coal-fired power stations, which is good. We talked about the preparation for the conference on biodiversity, which will take place in Kunming next year. The EU wants to support the preparation of this conference. We want to have an ambitious framework for the protection of biodiversity. I am pleased with the fact that during the dialogue today with China, we managed to talk about other topics which Jean-Michel has already mentioned, and topics which are difficult, where we don't always agree. Hong Kong, for example, the treatment of minorities and the issue of human rights. So I feel that today we had a good, open and honest dialogue which should be continued. We have said that an EU-China summit in full format should take place in physical form as soon as the pandemic allows it. It will probably be after the German presidency. I should think the summit would take place in Brussels. Jean-Michel has invited us to Brussels at any rate. It's very important, though, that we did have discussions before the summit with the other member states as well. It wasn't just a summit between us three. Rather, the President of the Council held discussions with all the other member states as well to establish what our position was. And I think that for all of us, that was an extremely important process, and has made a contribution to our development of a good foreign policy and the development of strategic partnerships, which are very important.
Danke, Frau Bundeskanzlerin. Passing the floor now to Madam President, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, it was a frank and open and a constructive and intense quadrilogue that we had today. I was about to say dialogue, but this is not the case. It was a broad spectrum of topics, indeed, from human rights to climate to digital to trade, and I want to focus on the trade part. Indeed, as we committed to at the summit in June, we have stepped up our engagement at the political level over the past weeks, notably in the areas of trade, climate and digital. And here I want to start with, in the trade agenda, with the comprehensive agreement on investment. Last summit 2 months ago, I stressed to President Xi that the European Union remains committed to a genuine result-oriented engagement and progress. We need concrete results. And now we have agreement amongst negotiations on 3 important issues. First of all, on the disciplines regarding the behavior of state-owned enterprises, then on forced technology transfer, and on transparency on subsidies. This is an important part, an important step forward. However, I want to caution that a lot still remains to be done in other important and difficult chapters of the agreement, particularly in two areas. The one is market access, and the other one is sustainable development. We expect that the market access barriers in China will be removed, especially for future and emerging digital technologies. They are the core of our economies. It's telecommunication, it's computer sectors, it's health, biotechnology, and the new energy vehicles and transport. We see that our investors just face too many barriers in these key sectors. And for us, with market access, it's not a question of meeting halfway, but it's a question of rebalancing the asymmetry and a question of openness of our respective markets. So we need China to move on these two issues, and we need it to move if we are to achieve our shared objective of finalizing negotiations this year. So in other words, China has to convince us that it is worth having an investment agreement. The second topic was and is Chinese overcapacity. It's also a serious issue for us, both in traditional sectors like steel and aluminium, but also in high-tech. There are so far, unfortunately, no concrete steps forward. So this needs to change, and we addressed it very clearly. Joining the Global Forum on Steel Access Capacity and eliminating the state subsidies that contribute to this overcapacity would be necessary steps in this regard. And I've agreed with President Xi to follow up on this bilaterally. We also reiterated to President Xi that China had committed to extending to EU businesses the favorable treatment granted to US operators under the US-China trade deal agreed in January, and we expect this commitment to be met. Now, what the digital is concerned, first of all, the European Union welcomes that China reaffirmed its commitment to a human-centric approach to AI and welcomes that work on this will be carried forward in the G20. Here too, we hope to see concrete progress in this context. We reaffirmed the importance of market access also here for goods and services in the area of telecommunications. The European market is open, and European companies must have fair and equal access to the Chinese market in return. We took note of President Xi's commitment to look into these matters. At the same time, the European Union will continue to stress the importance of its networks being secure. And in this overall context of all these different topics concerning the digital agenda we have together, I very much welcome that we had the first ever high-level digital dialogue, which took place last week. So we agreed with President Xi that we will continue and broaden this dialogue what the scope and the topics are concerned. Finally, on the WTO reform, China has repeatedly stated that it is committed to the WTO. That also requires that China negotiates to strengthen existing rules on industrial subsidies in the context of the World Trade Organization's reform and in line with the summit commitment it made in 2019. This was a topic too. Last but not least, we had a brief exchange on coronavirus pandemic, the pandemic we're all facing. We discussed the need to continue to act in global solidarity and cooperation in this matter. It is very important to engage in the global framework, not only to find a vaccine, but also to make it accessible to low and medium income countries. As you know, we've set up a whole global framework to ensure that, and we invited China to join this COVAX facility. It is important also to continue understanding the origins of the pandemic, and therefore we were very clear that it is very important to give the WHO all the possibilities to lead its investigations on the origin of COVID-19 to be successful. In sum, a very concrete meeting with tangible actions discussed.
Thank you, Madam President, for your remarks. We'll now take a couple of questions here in Brussels first. And since this is a virtual press conference, please bear with us. May I ask you to stick to one question per journalist and clearly state to whom you want to address your question to. I'm going to start first with Markus Prijs from ARD. Markus, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Hear me as well?
Yes, please. Ask your question.
So my question goes to Chancellor Merkel, and so if I may, I would like to ask in German. Die EU hat China ja mehrfach kritisiert wegen des
the EU has criticized China on a number of occasions because of its action in Hong Kong and human rights violations. You said it was raised today as well, but have you received any indications today that this criticism has been taken seriously or that there is a willingness to do something or to change? Thank you.
Ja, ich kann dazu nur sagen, dass der Präsident aus seiner Perspektive argumentiert hat. Das sind sicherlich zum Teil unterschiedliche Argumente als die wir benutzen. Er hat angeboten, aber das muss man sehen, ob das etwas wird, dass man dann auch in die Provinz Xinjiang reisen kann, dass Botschafter dorthin fahren können. Der Menschenrechtsdialog wird fortgesetzt. Das hat er angeboten. Also insofern gibt es schon Berührungspunkte für ein weiteres gemeinsames Vorgehen. Das heißt aber noch nicht, dass es Übereinstimmung in diesem Raum gibt. Aber vielleicht möchte...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, maybe Charles Michel would like to add something to what I said. Yes, indeed. We did have the opportunity once again, just like in June, to put forward our arguments and our serious concerns with regard to human rights, the state of the rule of law, and indeed the situation in Hong Kong. We had quite an intensive discussion on this, and we agreed that the dialogue on human rights would be continued further. We also considered about the possibility of visits by diplomats to the provinces which are under debate. Now, we touched on all of these issues, as we said this morning, all of those issues where we may have commonality, but also more difficult issues, and we had the opportunity to express our point of view and to stress the fundamental values we believe in.
Next question is for Stuart Lau. Stuart, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you very much. I also have a question for Madam Chancellor. Your supporters call you the Western leader who knows Chinese leadership thinking the best. But on the other hand, your critics say Germany's strong trading interests empowers China not just economically, but also geopolitically. And it is now competing with European technology and promoting political views alternative to Western values. Looking back at the last 15 years and looking at China today, do you think your approach succeeded, or would you have done things differently? Thank you.
Politisches Handeln ist ja immer in dem Moment, in dem es stattfindet und immer aus dem jeweiligen Kontext heraus. Das heißt, ich halte es nicht für sehr sinnvoll, jetzt 15 Jahre zurückzugucken und mir das Ergebnis von heute anzuschauen. Ich glaube, dass es wichtig und wichtig ist, sich gute strategische Beziehungen zu China zu bemühen, aber man darf sozusagen an der Stelle nicht Illusionen haben, sondern man muss die Dinge an den Realitäten messen. Und da sehen wir, dass
the reality in the face. And here I think we can see when it comes to economic contacts, China has opened up a little. There are some joint ventures, for example, where in some cases we've got, or you can have more than 50%, not just German businesses, but that applies to a lot of other businesses whereby countries have intensified their trade relations over the past 15 years. It's also a question of taking one's own strategic interests and protecting them. Over the past 15 years, I would say that economically, China has become significantly stronger.
die Forderung nach Reziprozität, nach Level Playing Field natürlich heutzutage sehr berechtigt ist. Das war vielleicht vor 15 Jahren
very well
nicht so der Fall,
justified
weil
nowadays.
China auch
That
mehr
may
den
not have
Charakter
been the
eines
case 15 years
Entwicklungslandes
ago when
hatte.
China
Heute
was
ist
closer to being
ein
a country
klarer
in the throes of
Wettbewerber in vielen
development.
Hochtechnologien.
China, in many
Und da
high-tech
muss
areas,
sozusagen der
is a
Marktzugang
clear
und
competitor. And when it comes to things like market access
Eigenschaften, unter denen unser Handel
and
stattfindet,
the
natürlich auch
conditions
gleichberechtigt
governing our
sein.
trade,
Ein
obviously
Level Playing Field, wie man so
a
schön
level
sagt, muss
playing
herrschen.
field
Es
must
müssen die
apply at this
regelbasierten
stage. In other
Fragen
words,
des
the
Multilateralismus
rules-based
eingehalten werden, so zum
multilateralism
Beispiel das
must be
Abkommen der
complied with.
WTO. Danach
The
haben wir heute
WTO
gefragt
agreement, for
bei den
example, we talked
Ausschreibungen.
about that in
Und
the area
China
of
verhandelt hier
public
seit sehr langer
procurement, for
Zeit mit
example,
der
because
WTO.
China
Bis
has
zu
been
keinem Ergebnis
under
gekommen,
lengthy
aber
negotiations with the
das wäre
WTO
gut,
on
wenn
that,
hier
without any
eben auch
result
Ergebnisse
being
erzielt
apparent
werden.
so far. It would be useful if some results could emerge there as well.
Staying in Berlin for a next round of questions, passing floor to my colleagues.
Ja, dann geht es jetzt hier in Berlin mit den Fragen der hiesigen Journalisten weiter.
We've got questions from journalists here in Berlin, and here we could say one question per journalist, and please say to whom you're addressing the question. Chancellor, I've got a question on the situation in Lesbos. The expectations are that by Wednesday a decision will be taken to accept additional refugees from the refugee camp in Moria. Do you think that will be a subject of several thousand, or will the number be less than that? And if I may follow up with another question, there it's a question of creating a European refugee a welcome center. When would that emerge, do you think?
Dass die Konzentration auf eine Zahl der falsche Ansatz ist.
I believe that concentrating on figures is the wrong approach.
13.000 Menschen,
There are 13,000 people on Lesbos who are in a very difficult situation. There are 400 minors who have already been taken to the mainland. So the question is now, how do we proceed? Germany is prepared to provide support when we're talking about building a new reception center on Lesbos. I've been talking to the Greek Prime Minister about this and also the President of the Commission. The Greek side has put forward a proposal which I would support, that this should not just be the responsibility of the Greeks, but rather this should be something which is managed by Europe. What shape this will take, a pilot project, for example, remains to be seen. Obviously, this is a Greek sovereign territory, and we need to make sure that the framework is in place for us to act as Europeans. But I think this is a very important step forward in making sure that migration policy is dealt with at European level. Secondly, we need to make sure the reception centre meets the standards, required standards. Moria camp was not acceptable. We've all known this for a while. The Greek Prime Minister has already brought 12,000 refugees to the mainland, but the situation must improve in qualitative terms. So the next question is, how can we support Greece? Greece is an external border country. It's a country which has shouldered a great deal of responsibility. We saw that in spring this year already, and that is why Greece has earned support. And this support should be organised on a European level as far as is possible. Germany feels responsible, though, and therefore we will be thinking more about this, but we're thinking particularly about who is most in need and which of these people we can take into Germany. We need to be talking about this in terms of a package, not just in terms of figures. Everybody knows that the migration policy can't just be driven or solved by Germany, but Germany is a strong country. It's a country which now holds the rotating presidency, so of course we are able to make a substantive contribution, but this contribution needs to be part of whole concepts. I'm very pleased that the Commission will soon be presenting a migration concept which will be the basis for the debate which will go on under the German presidency. Thanks.
Madam President.
Yes, thank you so much.
Ich sehe, dass Frau von der Leyen, die Kommissionspräsidentin, dazu auch was sagen will.
I can see that the Commission President von der Leyen, would like to say something, so we'll pass
ich möchte
the floor back to Brussels.
Diese Überlegungen ergänzen.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to add something to that.
In den letzten Tagen haben wir gemeinsam
few
Überlegungen
days,
angestellt,
we
dass
have
ein solches Flüchtlingslager sowohl von den griechischen Behörden und gegebenenfalls auch von den Agenturen der Europäischen Kommission mitgeleitet werden kann. Hier ist ganz, ganz wichtig, dass wir klären, wie die Zuständigkeiten, die Verantwortlichkeiten, die Möglichkeiten dann auf der jeweiligen Seite ist. Das heißt, wir werden genau auch miteinander verabreden müssen, unter welchen vertraglichen Bedingungen ein Memorandum of Understanding wir so etwas angehen könnten. Für mich ist auch wichtig, dass dies dann im Zusammenhang steht mit dem neuen Migrationspakt. Und in der Tat, wir haben beschlossen, den Migrationspakt vorzuziehen auf die nächste Woche, den 23. September, und dass diese Diskussionen um den Migrationspakt beschleunigt dann auch stattfinden können. Wir sind sehr dankbar, dass die deutsche
very pleased that the German presidency has helped us greatly with this and provided us with a lot of support. For us, it's important that this kind of a pilot project
und dann in diesem Fall griechischen Führung eines solchen Flüchtlingslagers
the fact that a reception center should be European and Greek-led
in dem neuen Migrationspakt, der dann auch umgesetzt werden muss.
Should
continuing,
also ensure that the migration pact is implemented.
Frage aus Berlin, Andreas Rinke von Reuters.
Andreas Rinke von Reuters.
Ich hätte eine Frage, die sich an zwei Personen richtet, die Kanzlerin und die Kommissionspräsidentin. Es geht nochmal um das Thema Investitionsschutzabkommen, was Sie erwähnt haben. Ich hätte ganz gerne gewusst, ob Sie wirklich optimistisch sind und glauben, dass das Abkommen bis Jahresende erreicht werden kann. Das ist jetzt schon mehrfach versprochen worden. Jetzt werden zwar einige Fortschritte genannt, eben nicht so viele. Also die Frage, glauben Sie, dass das Abkommen bis zum Jahresende steht? Und ist es nicht auch so eine Art Spaltpilz oder könnte es sein in den Beziehungen zu den USA, wenn die EU und China jetzt so ein Investitionsabkommen abschließen?
Von meiner Seite möchte ich nur sagen, die USA verhandeln ja auch seit geraumer Zeit über Handelsabkommen mit China, haben sogar schon einen Teil abgeschlossen. Zum Teil geht es dort genau um dieselben Themen. Deshalb kann ich überhaupt nicht sehen, dass das auf die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika ein Problem sein sollte. Zweitens glaube ich, dass die ganze Sache jetzt einen politischen Impuls bekommen hat. Es ist ja so, seit 2013 wird verhandelt. Dann stagnieren solche Verhandlungen auch immer. Im Juni, als das Gespräch war zwischen der Kommission und dem Ratspräsidenten und dem chinesischen Präsidenten, ist da schon ein erster Impuls gegeben worden. Und irgendwann müssen ja auch politische Entscheidungen getroffen werden. Das noch
and of course decisions have to be made. A huge amount of work needs to be done, as Ursula von der Leyen has said. The Chinese also have expectations of us as well. These expectations are difficult for us to fulfill as well. We sometimes say China needs to move on certain points, but the Chinese are clever negotiators. They know where we have constraints, so we need to take a balanced approach. And without political support, this won't work. We now have this political support, though. I think it could work. I can't give a guarantee today, though. That would be wrong to do that. But the political will must be there in order to achieve an agreement, and this political agreement is there on, I beg your pardon, this political will is there on both sides.
We're continuing the press conference here in Brussels, and I'm going to take two more questions. I'm first going to start with Angela Mauro from the Huffington Post. Angela, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, and thanks for the opportunity. I have a question for Chancellor Merkel. If she can elaborate more on the climate part of the deal. Did you discuss a hypothetical deadline for China to become a neutral country for the emissions, I mean? For the EU, it's 2050. Before the meeting, they told us that was this hypothetical deadline on 2060 for China to respect these goals. Is this a realistic deadline? Thank you.
Nein, das muss ja China für sich klären und das soll in dem High-Level-Dialog auch besprochen werden. Wir können nicht aus Seiten der EU für China die Ziele festlegen, so wie China nicht für uns die Ziele festlegt. Also das ist heute nicht im Detail besprochen worden, sondern das Ergebnis dieses Dialogs war, dass es diesen High-Level-Dialog jetzt kontinuierlich geben soll zu diesen Fragen und da wird genau auch darüber gesprochen.
Thank you. We're going to go to Madam President again because I forgot your question was addressed to you as well on the investment agreement,
yes.
And you wanted to add a couple of remarks, I suppose.
Yeah, well, indeed. So what the investment agreement is concerned and the timeline of potentially having it as an agreement that we can sign at the end of the year. Indeed, we started. Well, let's put it the other way. When we had the summit in June 2020, up to then, almost no progress was seen, and the negotiations team only did not come on a high political level. So we were very clear in June that there would be no investment agreement if we do not see substantial progress. And we have seen a reaction that is positive. So now it's a high-level negotiation team that is sitting on that topic. And we've seen the progress I told you about, the fields where we are advancing now. But I must say there is still a lot to do. So on the market access, for example, the telecom and computer services, there are these famous joint venture and equity caps restrictions that have to be lifted. Same goes for the automotive sector, for example, that here also the economic needs tests need to be lifted, just to name two. But it shows to you that we are really serious about having access to the Chinese market and to tear down the barriers. Same goes for the sustainable development. So we need here progress. Of course, on the Chinese side, there are also demands. But as I've said, it is now the time to prove that there's a real interest to step up, to change things for the better. Then there is the possibility to have this investment agreement. So it's not a matter of time, but it's a matter of substance now.
Thank you, Madam President. Going to take a last question now from David Carretta, Radio Radicale. David, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Radio Radicale,
Thank
Radio
you.
Italienne.
I'm from Italian radio, Radio Radicale. I've got a question for President Michel.
Vu l'optimisme dans certaines des déclarations que vous avez faites.
Some of the declarations you've made have been reasonably optimistic. So could I ask you what's changed since June on some of the more sensitive issues, such as Hong Kong, Xinjiang, COVID transparency, internet propaganda and other issues? We've even heard a foreign affairs minister say that a politician who's a president of the Senate of the Czech Republic said that they would pay dearly for having visited Taiwan. Is that acceptable? And perhaps I could put the same question to the Chancellor with regard to the President of the Senate of the Czech Republic. No, we're not lowering our guard in any way. When it comes to human dignity, protection of minorities and human rights, these need to be touched upon also at very high-level dialogues. And in June, I give you an example by talking about specific cases and examples. I referred to those to make it clear that we wanted to continue our dialogue on various issues. So we're not being naive in any way. We are very aware of the fact that you've got an economic, political and social model in China which is very different from the model we attempt to develop at EU level. Angela Merkel has pointed out the fact that prior to this video conference, we were striving to be able to express a unified position expressed on behalf of the EU. I'd like to thank all those member states who assisted us in doing that, in fact. We wish to continue to be committed with China in a number of different domains, which we talked about. That includes, of course, human rights, which needs to be watched very, very closely. We had some suggestions. One today involved visits, as we've heard, to the provinces, which were questioned in some ways. So once again, we felt we needed to put forward our ideas and our arguments, in particular with regard to the status of Hong Kong and the erosion of its autonomy, which we call into question. My feeling is that this meeting was not a standard summit of a formal nature. We involved substantial discussions where we put forward the values we very much wish to defend and believe in, and we were very firm in doing so, but realistic at the same time. And that's the way I think we need to move forward. And you saw that we did provide a number of ideas in June. We managed to sign an agreement this morning on geographical indications, which is a step forward. And I think determination and negotiations will allow us to progress further. And Angela Merkel said initially, she made it clear that we continue to wish to be engaged in this. We want the EU to speak with a strong voice. And that's what we've suggested when we said that we hope there will be a genuine physical summit here in Brussels with the 27 member states as soon as the situation allows this to occur. Could I
ergänzen, weil ich die Meinung von Charles Michel teile, dass wir ja das gesamte Spektrum heute auf der Tagesordnung hatten.
We had the whole range of issues on our agenda today, and that means we didn't just talk to China about trade-related issues, but also about those issues which are characterized by quite differing views and opinions. We do have different political systems, and clearly that in itself represents a very clear and significant difference, but as EU member states who have committed themselves to multilateralism, we also feel that we are called upon to conduct these negotiations with major partners across the globe, and obviously the number of problems may have increased in certain areas. We've got to acknowledge that, but on the other hand, we've also got to attempt to find solutions to these, even if we just crawl forward bit by bit. I think that's what we've done today.
Etwas dafür getan, dass die Europäische
Union
als ein wichtiger Faktor auf der Welt eben auch ihren Beitrag leistet, ihre Werte, aber auch ihre Interessen durchzusetzen.
Danke, Frau Bundeskanzlerin. And with these final remarks, this concludes our press conference. Thank you all for joining, and see you soon.
Et voilà.